Today, we're going to journey back in time. We're going to visit a world that was so vibrant, so complex, and then, in the blink of an eye, was almost completely wiped off the map. We're talking about the lost world of Eastern European Jewry.
So, let's start with a number. Just before World War II, there were about 8.5 million Jews living in Eastern Europe. Now think about that for a second. That was nearly half of the entire Jewish population on the planet, all living right there in this one part of the world.
And that, of course, brings up the huge questions we're going to dig into. How did this incredible civilization even come to be? What made it so unique? And after it was so brutally destroyed, what's left of it today? What's its legacy?
Well, our story begins in a place you might not expect. It starts centuries ago with an invitation in a kingdom that doesn't even exist anymore. This was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and it became the unlikely heartland for Europe's Jews.
What's so fascinating is that this wasn't just about being nice. Nope, this was pure strategy. Polish kings wanted to build up their kingdom, and they saw Jewish communities as the perfect partners. I mean, think about it. In an age when most people were illiterate, they brought widespread literacy, they brought numeracy, and they had these incredible international trade networks. They were a huge asset.
And in exchange for those skills, the kings gave them something truly remarkable: autonomy. And you really have to get this part to understand the whole story. They weren't just allowed to live there. They were basically a state within a state. They could govern themselves, use their own courts, and practice their religion freely. This was the secret sauce that allowed a whole unique culture to flourish for centuries.
And boy, did it flourish. For hundreds of years, this unique civilization absolutely blossomed. And at the very center of it all was an institution you've probably heard of, even if you don't know exactly what it is: the shtetl.
So a shtetl was way more than just a little village. As it says here, it was the social, cultural, and economic center of everything. For millions of people, the shtetl wasn't just a place they lived, it was their entire universe. And this slide just shows you how deep that universe went. They had their own language, Yiddish, they had their own laws. You didn't go to the Polish courts, you went to the rabbinic courts. Everything locally was run by a community council called the Kahal. I mean, it was a completely self-sufficient, self-contained world. But, no world stays the same forever. And when the 19th century rolled around, huge forces from the outside and radical new ideas from the inside started to shake things up, pulling this traditional world in all sorts of new directions.
First, the political ground just vanished from under their feet. That big, protective Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, it got carved up by its neighbors. And just like that, millions of Jews found themselves living under new rulers, especially the Russian Empire, which was, let's just say, not nearly as friendly.
And you can see on this timeline how things got worse and fast. First, Russia literally fenced them in, creating this restricted zone called the Pale of Settlement. Then, in 1881, the Tsar is assassinated, and that unleashes these horrific waves of anti-Jewish riots, the pogroms. It's no wonder that by 1897, you have people saying, "We're not safe here. The only answer is to have our own country." And that was the birth of modern Zionism.
Now, at the exact same time all this is happening, there's a huge battle of ideas raging inside the Jewish community. It was a real tug of war. On one side, you have Hasidism, this huge spiritual revival saying, we need to double down on our faith. And on the other, you have the Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment, saying, no, we need to look outwards, embrace science and modern culture. Two totally different visions for the future.
So you have all this pressure building up, inside and out. It's a powder keg, really. And in the 20th century, that keg exploded with a terrible 1-2 punch of mass migration and a catastrophe unlike any other in human history.
I mean, just look at these numbers for a second. In Poland, the very heartland of this world, the Jewish population went from over 3 million to under 400,000 in 6 years. That's a 90% reduction. That was the Holocaust.
Statistics like that can feel abstract, but behind them are millions of people. The writer and survivor Elie Wiesel put it in words that just capture the feeling perfectly. For us, the sun had set. The world had become a dark and terrifying place.
So it's so important to understand that this world ended in two distinct waves. First, you had this huge wave of emigration starting in the 1880s with millions fleeing the poverty and the pogroms, mostly heading to America. And then the second wave was the Holocaust.
the systematic murder of the 6 million who had stayed behind.
But here's the thing, the story doesn't actually end there. Because you can destroy a place, you can murder a people, but a culture, an idea, that's much, much harder to kill. The civilization was gone, but its legacy was transformed, and it still echoes all around us today.
What happened was a massive shift. The center of the Jewish world literally moved across the ocean. The descendants of those who fled, along with the survivors, rebuilt Jewish life, mainly in the United States and Israel. So today, when you look at the American Jewish community, you're looking at the direct cultural heir of the shtet.
And the cultural fingerprints of this lost world are absolutely everywhere. From the beautiful, soulful sound of klezmer music, to the incredible stories of authors like Isaac Bashevis Singer, the food we eat, bagels, pastrami, come on, even the very founders of the Hollywood movie studios, and huge world-changing ideas like psychoanalysis and Zionism, they all have deep, deep roots in this Eastern European soil.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really powerful question. The story of Eastern European Jewry is, without a doubt, a story of catastrophic loss. But it is also, somehow, a story of incredible resilience. And it forces us to ask, how does a culture survive when its home is completely destroyed? When the physical world is gone, what is left?